Ready?
Yep.
Good. Hi everyone. We're Kim and Ian from Her Majesty's Land Registry. Hopefully you can tell who's who, but just in case, there we are. This is our first time of speaking at our conference, so we are a little bit nervous. But we took heart from Diana's talk yesterday, and so at the moment we're just allowing ourselves to suck. So please bear with us if we're rubbish.
We hope you're all feeling well, but we understand we've also got the hangover session, so we thought we'd wake you up a bit. What we want you to do is to turn around and introduce yourself to the person behind you. Okay. Brilliant. Okay, so now you all know each other. We want you, in the next 2 minutes, to talk to the person you've just introduced yourself to and talk about what's the most surprising thing you've learned from Agile on the Beach so far and what's the most useful thing you're going to take away. You've got 2 minutes. Go. Oh. This is easy. You're not talking to anybody.
Oh, okay. Right, that's fine. No worries.
Thanks, everybody. Hopefully that's woken you up a bit.
Yeah.
If the exercise wasn't doing the job, the terror of the countdown clock should have woken you up. So.
Right, should we get started?
Yeah.
Okay, so we both work for Her Majesty's Land Registry, who are responsible for guaranteeing land ownership in England and Wales.
We're responsible for registering land and property. The indemnity is worth £4 trillion.
We have 24 million titles of land ownership, and 83% currently of England and Wales is registered.
We were founded in 1862, so we've been around for a while. We have about 4,500 employees nationwide.
We're really proud of the fact that unlike a lot of government departments, we've got an in-house IT department based down here in Plymouth, and that's been around since the 70s.
Although we're part of the government, we are self-funding, so we charge fees for using our services.
We were thinking about Land Registry and how we compare to other organisations, so we've developed a new Agile adoption scale, which we're very excited to launch to you lucky people today.
The Mary Poppins Agile Business Scale. Woo!
You can tell we both got kids.
On the left, you've got Mr. Banks. He's very traditional, he's very organised, hierarchical. He does things by the book. He really struggles with change.
And on the right is the lovely Mary Poppins. She's very agile, creative, disruptive, but at the same time she's matriarchal and supportive. And not forgetting, she's the inventor of gamification.
In the middle is Mrs. Banks, who's interested in new concepts and ideas, both women, but she's still very much wedded to the old ways of doing things. This is where we are. That's where the Land Registry is.
So Ian and I were having a meeting. It may have been in the pub, and we were discussing our projects and the nature of the organisation.
My team's currently developing a service called Find Property Information. It's a public-facing service, and we're building it in entirely new platforms, and we're trying to do it a totally agile way.
And our team is moving an existing service stack from a mainframe WebSphere environment onto a cloud-ready stack. So it's a lot more technical project, but we're still using agile delivery mechanisms.
So we started to identify that although our projects are really different, there's some sort of commonality between them. They're finding similar things work really well. We had similar challenges. And so we decided, let's apply for Agile on the Beach.
Obviously a good idea at the time. Then the cold light of day and our hangover hit us, and we were worried, what if all our issues were just us?
So we went to local conference, Future Sync, Tony,
Ooh, yay.
and we ran a workshop to see if other people were having similar challenges and successes as us.
So our workshop was on at the same time as Belinda. I think you all know Belinda Waldock. She's one of the founders of Agile on the Beach. She's amazing. So we knew we'd have a hard time enticing people into our session. So we used some slightly underhand tactics to lure people from Belinda's sessions into ours. Sorry, Belinda.
Sorry.
Goes on a bit longer this one, doesn't
It goes on a bit. So we asked participants to think about the most successful projects they've ever worked on, and why was that? What were the things that made it really successful? But we also wanted them to think about the most hideous car crash projects they've been on and why that was as well. And we got them to put down the reasons for those onto post-its.
Some people had a lot they wanted to get off their chest.
The result was great. We started to see similar trends we'd experienced, and we've kind of what works, what doesn't work, but also what works.
Amazing, we thought. We're not alone.
Yay! So we had another meeting, and it was flushed with success. So we thought, okay, what's our theme going to be? And Kim came up with the idea of the well-known children's book, That's Not My.
So this is the one that we chose, especially for Agile on the Beach. That's not my pirate. His scarf is too rough.
So what does that look like applied to Agile? Well, for example, that's not my Agile conference. The presenters aren't selling anything.
So what we're hoping to get out of today is to share some real-world experiences with you, to promote discussion and also identify commonality.
Working in Agile teams can be hard, and it's easy to fall into the trap of imposter syndrome. We aren't consultants or salespeople, we're just your average Scrum Masters on the ground. But we think that makes our insights a bit more real.
So by sharing our successes and challenges, we hope to learn from you guys too. So please ask us questions at the end. And let's get started. Here's the first one.
That's not my Agile. My stakeholder list is massive.
In the textbook world of product management, the product owner is expected to sit in the middle of this Venn diagram, taking inputs from the business, the techies and the users.
The reality is most organisations, there are so many silos of stakeholders representing different areas of business and tech that the voice of the user gets lost and drowned out by the megaphones of organisational needs.
And it's really hard to gather user needs versus business needs, as users are physically on the outside of the organisation.
So how have we tried to solve this?
That's my Agile. We put user needs first.
So back in the bad old days, we used to get stakeholders together in a room, expect them to know exactly what people wanted, exactly what the product would look like. It's kind of an unspoken assumption between both business and IT that we're both guilty of, and I think that was true in most of the government.
And then in 2010, the Government Digital Service was born, and they introduced the concept of user research for public-facing services, for public-facing service teams. We now embrace user research as part of our sprint cycles.
So we now have a user researcher in our team, and pretty much every sprint we run a session to validate that the stories that or the hypotheses we're making are valid. We actively encourage our team members to go along to the user research sessions as it helps build understanding and empathy for why we're building the things we're doing within the team too. It does that so much better than the written story can. We mainly research using prototypes, but occasionally we do a session with the live service just to check the actual thing is working as we expect. And if possible, we aim to have at least one assisted digital user per session. An assisted digital user is somebody that's maybe struggles using websites or the internet, either through accessibility needs or because they don't feel confident or able to use them. Being a government organisation, we need to build services for everyone, so we spend a lot of time on accessibility and good design.
So why do we do this? Well, 5 participants can identify 80% of usability problems, and the team get a greater understanding of what users are trying to do. You can see what works and doesn't work in the service, so it ultimately ends up being clearer and easier to use, and we get happy users.
Yeah. There's some things you need to be aware of. User research, you can get stakeholder user need conflicts. Okay, users are expecting this kind of behaviour, but there's business needs against that. You also need to watch out for the morale of your team. They spend some time building a function, especially if you're testing a live service and it's getting panned. That can be quite demoralising. Don't forget your domain experts. Everybody in the team is an expert in some way. When you put the thing in front of actual people, it never pans out quite the way you expect. And test the whole service, not just the website or application. So what's the unhappy paths? What happens if something goes wrong? Do they contact somebody? What's the flow for that? How does that work? And don't forget the internal staff are users too. So if you've got service desk users or audit needs and things like that, check with those people that you're meeting their needs too. Okay. On to the next one.
So moving on to the next one. That's not my Agile. My team is massive.
According to the GDS Service Design Manual, in your team you need a service manager, a product manager, a delivery manager, a technical architect, an assisted digital lead, a designer, a user researcher, a content designer, a developer, a web operations engineer, a performance analyst, and a front-end developer. Phew.
Wow. So even having just one person in each of those roles, that leads to 66 lines of communication. And that's before we even think about the roles that aren't listed there, such as BAs and testers.
To be fair, I haven't met any delivery managers in government that applied one person per role as yet.
So by the time we added a few developers into our teams, we both arrived at a team of around 12.
The result was, with all those communication channels, the team really struggled to stay on target. And what happens when you fail to stay on target?
Oh, good, I can't maneuver.
Stay on target.
We're too close.
Stay on target.
Loosen up!
Which one of us do you think did the slides?
So we're finding like latency and noise within the team itself was visibly slowing us down.
Stand-ups took forever to get through.
Planning was epic, unpleasant experience of many opinions and views. Essentially, we're becoming, staying focused on small tasks and limiting work in progress was also much harder. It took us a long time to correct this problem because we were wary of trying to solve it. We'd naturally go back to the siloed ways of working we'd used before.
So what did we do? That's my Agile. My team is adaptive.
Eventually, we realised that dividing into small sub-teams was worth trying. And despite the challenges, we built up a really good team dynamic. I was concerned if by splitting the team up, if we handled that badly, it could lead to a sort of them and us culture. So keen to show that we're still one team for the service. Andy, our designer, had come up with a mission patch for the team. And to be honest, nobody really knew what it was representing, but we all loved it. And inevitably, it kind of ended up being called the Disco Crow. So that's what we called our teams. We had Team Disco, Team Crow, both made up of developers and testers. But then we quickly realised that we need a sort of sub-team of products, user research, the BA side of things. So we also included Team User Research.
They all look like that as well, don't they? So the result was that by dividing up planning and just allowing the people in those teams to focus on the stories relevant to them, the smaller teams have much more focused workload. Despite having technically more planning meetings, the time it took was less. We still shared stand-ups and show and tells to keep everyone in the loop of the bigger picture.
So this was really good, but we're still spending a lot of time defining work up front, day to day, only to find when we took it into a user research session and we actually started doing the work, a lot of the stuff was wrong, so we spent a lot of time and wasted planning. The teams were kind of picking up whichever story was next, so it wasn't really building a consistency of purpose. It felt a little bit like a feature factory. However, smaller was definitely better, so we took it a step further. And we introduced a new, even smaller team. We called them the New Model Army, and the aim was to literally throw the Scrum process at that team. So if anybody came along and questioned why we were working the way we were doing, and to reduce organisational noise, we could say, we're doing Scrum, read the book. The results so far have helped us focus much more on a team mission, so tangible, measurable goals, rather than a bunch of tasks to be achieved. And the aim is to keep us focused on delivery, just what's required to meet those goals, rather than a set of tasks. They also get, by doing that, they have the flexibility to adapt if they find something new along the way. As long as they're still keeping to that mission, then that flexibility is within there. So the team's not been running that long. We've been running for just over a month, about 6 weeks. But so far, we've had some really early successes, and we're considering making the rest of the team structured in the same way.
So in summary, this slide sums up our approach. If you want the benefits of small teams, then those individuals in the team need to wear multiple hats and not have rigid job titles in siloed departments.
In a Mr. Banks organisation, this can be extremely hard to achieve. Team members often have conflicting interests from heads of practice or line management chains, and the burden that can place on the individuals in the team shouldn't be underestimated. The only way you can have we've had some semblance of success, is to literally throw the Scrum process at people. Say, team, not roles.
Obviously, an additional challenge from doing this is where new professional disciplines are developing in the organisation, people need time to develop into that discipline and focus on those skills. We need to find a balance of developing deep skills and broad skills.
Recognition and support of the multidisciplinary nature of Agile teams is needed from the very top of the organisation to achieve this.
Next one?
Yeah.
Okay. That's not my Agile. I'm reporting different metrics to different silos.
In our day-to-day work, we found that a number of different stakeholders wanted to know different information dependent on their silo.
Our delivery managers wanted to see velocity to check that the team's delivery was continually improving.
The programme board wanted to know the cost per sprint and the features delivered so that they could track the business case was on track.
And our audit team still wanted all of their existing CMMI process metrics so that we could still pass the accreditation.
Test managers wanted to know the number of defects.
The senior leadership team wanted to know risks and issues.
And the executive board wanted to know progress if our services we were building were supporting KPIs.
So, we spent more time gathering metrics than supporting the team into actually delivering anything.
Yeah, worse still, the metrics were so fragmented, the team were deriving very little value from them.
It was another reflection of a siloed organisation affecting delivery.
So, a bit of a warning here, we haven't satisfactorily solved this issue yet. Nonetheless, we felt it was worth discussing what we've tried and talking through what we've learned so far.
So the first iteration was to build a web dashboard where all the metrics could be centrally viewed.
We identified a number of benefits of doing that.
It was one place for all our stakeholders to get what they needed.
We could generate all the metrics from a couple of inputs, saving us time.
We had a historical record of sprints to help with auditing.
Everyone could view it, so in theory it would cut down on requests coming into the team.
And we colour-coded the status of the project so it was easy to see what projects were going well and which ones were having issues.
Brilliant, we thought. We are great. Let's get chuffy badges all round.
Pretty quickly, we realised all was not well.
Stakeholders rarely used it. They preferred to get the information sent to them rather than going to find it.
The metrics constrained the teams. For example, if a team wanted to use a different framework, they were constrained by the fact it was based primarily on Scrum.
Because it was open to all, the team were exposed to criticism, often indirectly and without context.
And most importantly, the issues we were raising through the tool weren't being picked up and addressed.
Our second attempt at solving the issue was to set up a metrics working group to identify the information needs and what they were going to be used for.
This very quickly descended into a frustrating exercise of requests for the same information with no clear purpose as to why. It's my favourite slide. So true.
So we found ourselves contemplating the very essence of metrics and what their purpose was. And we came up with the following. Metrics exist to celebrate success and make us look awesome. They're also there to identify where things are not going so well, so we could do something about it.
Hang on a minute, we thought. This looks familiar.
Retrospectives are there to celebrate success and identify where things are not going so well so we can do something about it.
We both like the elegance of using the
Hang on.
tools... sorry.
Wait a minute.
Oh, sorry.
What if we just got all the Scrum Masters in a room and they tell us what's working and what's not?
There we go. We both like the elegance of using the tools and processes of Agile to meet the metrics needs of the organisation.
Funnily enough, it was preparing for this presentation that led us to this realisation.
So we've had an initial session with all the other Scrum Masters, and we think this idea's got merit. We identified a large number of common themes, and the next steps are for us to do the same exercise with the delivery managers to help us try and resolve some of those issues. We haven't solved it yet, but that's part of the process.
Yes.
Yes.
So GDS has got some good advice on agile governance. Don't slow down delivery, make decisions when they're needed, do it with the right people, go and see for yourself, only do the metrics if they add value, and trust and verify. So in summary, that's our agile. We are iterating to solve a problem. We haven't solved it yet, we're getting there. Okay, so.
Next one. That's not my agile. I keep telling the team what to do. So one thing Ian and I have both found the most challenging part of being a Scrum Master is getting to grips with the balance of servant leadership.
Again, our thinking faces are on. The aim of the Scrum Master is to be a servant leader, to coach the team to a place where you become redundant.
But we both found that we'd find ourselves being asked what to do, or even worse, dictating or telling people what to do.
But why? What was leading us to behave this way, and why is it actually an issue?
When we explored the reasons, there were numerous ones.
We'll go through them. So firstly, we found we're still very much an ex-theory organisation.
Ex-theory managers believe that staff need constant motivation or cajoling into doing work. Most civil service and definitely Land Registry processes are ex-theory, as people's work are assessed primarily by tangible results, and we use promotion and line management objective settings to reward or punish our staff.
Y-theory managers are much more optimistic, and they encourage their staff to develop their skills and suggest improvements. Appraisals are regular, but unlike in ex-theory organisations, they're used to encourage open communication rather than control staff.
So Y-theory managers assume that staff are happy to work on their own initiative, they're more involved in decision making, they enjoy taking ownership of their work, seek and accept responsibility and need very little direction, they view work as fulfilling and challenging, and they solve problems creatively and imaginatively.
So Scrum, most of Agile is aligned to Y-theory principles, but we were finding that in reality we're using a mixture of both.
Our organisation is very project-focused.
Something strange happens to the Pareto principle when work is planned in projects, especially if that work's broken down into work packages and farmed off. The reality is once the initial business case is approved, the focus shifts away from the benefits, and it becomes much more around how quickly and cheaply can we deliver this list of tasks we've been given. So the Pareto principle warps into how can I deliver at least 80% of what I've been asked in the time and cost tolerances.
And Agile is aligned to a product or service focus, and the team focus becomes, how can I identify and deliver the 20% of the work that will deliver 80% of the value?
If a team doesn't understand the product vision and the value that's expected, this can be extremely hard to achieve.
And if you're not working at a greenfield site, inevitably there's a certain level of technical complexity, especially if your application stack is monolithic. It needs a lot of management and coordination to reduce the risk of blowing things up. If your team is used to operating in this environment, there's a level of fear, as the impact of failure is huge.
Even when working on isolated, smaller systems, things still go wrong, and Agile teams need support to balance fixing versus developing new services, new features. The mindset change from throwing things over the fence and walking away to supporting and building the service is rarely pain-free.
So all of the above reasons can ultimately result in a lack of confidence or adversity to risk. One of the key Agile principles, as we all know, is to fail fast. However, that's me up there, by the way. However, if your team isn't in an environment where they feel safe to fail at all, inevitably they're going to ask for permission, support, or will avoid completing tasks.
So we end up in a position where we're telling people what to do, or we're still commanding them. So how have we tried to solve these problems?
That's my Agile. We're becoming servant leaders.
This is us at this slide. Imposter syndrome.
Yeah, definitely. So the first step towards this is to trust the team.
Trust is a really interesting subject, so we Googled it before we started the presentation. Just Googling trust quotes shows how nearly all of them are about what happens when trust is broken. For example, trust takes years to build, seconds to break, and forever to repair. Or, my love is unconditional, my trust and respect are not. There weren't any about how to develop trust, apart from one.
The best way to find out if you can trust someone is to trust them. Great quote. Ernest Hemingway had it nailed there. You just have to trust your team. The fact that most people, especially creative workers, are intrinsically motivated to do a good job, they want to understand why and what they're trying to achieve. This can lead to challenges, however, so it's necessary to, here we go, translate.
Users and product people generally talk in conceptual terms and metaphors. It's really hard to describe something that doesn't yet exist, so it's easier to do that through metaphors.
Developers tend to communicate in much more literal terms. They prefer clarity of purpose as it makes their daily battle with logic much more manageable.
It's our role to promote the communication between those two groups to help them understand one another and empathise with their point of view.
Or to put it another way, common understanding is key to building customer collaboration over contract negotiation.
Sounds familiar.
Tick.
One of the other things we need to do is, if we're going to be successful, we need to nurture an experimental culture. It's our job to do that.
So you can identify your type of organisation by how they react to things going wrong.
In a risk-averse organisation, an organisation reverts to finger-pointiness when things go wrong.
It's a reflection of a siloed organisation. No one team is responsible, so figuring out what's going wrong is extremely hard.
This results in blame and ego and all the unpleasantness associated with that.
Eventually the problem is figured out, normally by making people work together from each silo, and the problem gets fixed.
In fail-fast organisations, the focus is on fixing the problem and moving on. The time for feeling bad and reflecting is after the event.
Service-based teams are more inclined to do this, as they're the ones that feel the pain if things go wrong and they don't want it to happen again.
Okay. So finally, our role is to protect. My team call me the shit umbrella. Not because I'm really bad at keeping rain off, but because I'm good at deflecting noise and things from them.
When you're working in a different way to the rest of the organisation, it's far too easy to leave the team exposed to criticism and distraction, resulting in them being less likely to experiment and try new things.
It's our role to protect them from the noise and to promote why we work the way we do to the wider organisation.
As Scrum Masters, we're the team's greatest advocate externally, and internally we're the team's biggest critic.
So it's always worth asking, in summary, you hate this slide.
I hate this slide.
What would Yoda do?
Yoda was a great mentor, explaining not just how to be a Jedi, but why that was important.
However, if everything was going wrong, he'd always just get up, get weighed in with his lightsaber and sort the problem out.
To be a good Scrum Master, it doesn't hurt to think, what would
Yoda
do?
So, in summary, oh, hello, what happened there? Being agile in waterfall environments is really hard. Focus on users and outcomes. Small fixed teams are essential to success. Trust is really hard, but you just have to do it. Culture is always greater than process. The right support from the top is essential. Keep learning and adapting. There's no perfect system. You need to keep iterating and learning.
And that's us.
Thank you.
Any questions for Ian?
Yeah.
Good choice, Ian.
Still good advice.
That still works.
Yeah, yeah. He's right though, isn't he? That's fail fast. You either succeed or you don't, but keep doing it. I still think we're doing it, if I'm honest. I don't think we're fully there. for where we are now, it's been a 2-year journey. It's a long journey, definitely. I think we're only just starting to realise the benefits of working the way we do.
Thanks for a excellent presentation. This is the real world.
Yeah, thanks.
Again, I don't know if you saw my talk yesterday, doing Agile in conventional organisations is enormously challenging.
Yeah.
What you're doing sounds brilliant. The question I had is, to what extent is the rest of the organisation sort of changing? Because I think for this Agile to work,
Yes.
it's not, I don't think it can be a top-down thing, but you've got to have a realisation
It's both ways.
in the wider stakeholder community, the ministry, the domain experts and so on, this culture of trying stuff, seeing whether it works, accepting that we're going to have failures.
Yeah.
And I just wonder what's happening there, and are you trying to sort of broaden the understanding what it is that you're trying to do?
Yeah, so a few things have happened to help things along. So until fairly recently, we used to have a separate IT function from sort of product development directorates, so completely separate directors. We now mash that together into one big thing, so it's, we're all working to the same goals a lot more. We have made some mistakes in the way in terms of this, like for example, yes, but like large organisational mistakes, for example. So we set a KPI on our service to pass a beta assessment by March last year, without knowing what that service even looks like. So, and that put a hell of a lot of pressure on the team to deliver that, when it wasn't really a necessary KPI. So those kind of large mistakes are starting to make sort of senior stakeholders and senior exec board people start to realise, okay, hang on, we're not doing this quite right. How do we change the way we think and structure things? I think that's still our biggest project. The slide there about projects versus service focus is still our biggest challenge for me. How do you focus on just doing the things that are of value, and rather than the things that you put into a business case entirely? How are you measuring the value better? There's been loads of talks on that today, so I'm going to take a lot of that back. Yeah.
Your labels for your small teams, shaper, designer, tinkerer, are very similar to the Albion profile.
Yes.
Intentional?
Yeah, so that's a slide deck from a guy called John Cutler. He does loads and loads of stuff around product management. It's very, very Belgian based. I think it's still bedding in. I think we still have challenges around roles. So we are still structured around, I'm a developer, I'm a tester. And some of the people that have tried to break those roles and just go, well, I'm a team member. And within our team, we do development and we do testing. We do user research. They've had quite a lot of pressure from their line management change, for example, and that's been quite difficult to break down. We're in the process of going through how do we change our organisational structure to support that a little bit better? How do we make heads of practice more like guild masters if you take the Spotify model? How do you get heads of practice to focus on the least the person least set up to do? So head of test, for example, train all the developers how to test. The testers already know how to test. Head of development, train all the testers how to develop. The developers already know what they're doing. That kind of structure, we're not quite there yet. We're getting there.
And are all delivery managers, Prince trained government project managers who have got the new
No, they're different people again. We've got delivery managers and we've got
project managers.
Project managers. Yes, so, yeah, two levels there.
Yeah, we still haven't figured out some of those organisational structures to work. We still have a project office, for example. Yeah. Yeah.
It feels like you're understandably lots of figuring out there. You have to do yourself and come to events like this to learn.
Yeah.
Is that very much of a fit agile type of work in the public sector environment?
Yeah.
Have you looked at other local government or other public sector environments and seen where they do it, if they're doing it, and what they're doing with the culture too?
Yeah. So I think that's one of the things that, one of the real successes GDS has built is building a wider government sort of practices. So there's like a cross-government Slack channel, for example, and there's a delivery managers section in there, and you're always like sharing ideas. And okay, this is what works for our organisation. There's lots of cross-government meetups starting up. So that is actually starting to pay off. I think we're in a slightly different position because we've always had an IT department, whereas a lot of organisations, government organisations, have traditionally outsourced it. They don't have quite as much of the scarring that Dan and I forgot his name, James, thank you, were talking about yesterday. That organisational scar tissue is developed around IT in our organisation, whereas others have outsourced that and don't have that, so they can move into new ways of working a little bit easier, in my opinion. Yeah.
How do you handle the stakeholders and the priorities that they've got in place for the background, you've got that, and then the output? What happens with the metrics? You said about bringing the Scrum Masters together, but what happens within that afterwards?
But this is where we kind of go on to the that one. Yeah, but we haven't fully solved this one yet. So
that's the one we're working on at the minute.
We've had that initial session with our Scrum Master community, and we all kind of went, this is so obvious. This is so obvious. We're identifying all the things that are not working across teams. So what are we going to do about that? Well, these are the things that are working really, really well. How are we going to spread that? We need to take that to the next step and build that into, try to replace metrics with that kind of behaviour. What I think will be a challenge is people like to see hard numbers, and how we do that, I'm not entirely sure yet. For me, it's about changing their mindset to go, here's a list of stuff that's not working, and all of your staff are telling you it's not working, let's fix that. Or these are the things that are really, really good, that's great, let's go and sell that, versus I've got a line that's going up, I don't really know what it means, or I've got a green thing, brilliant, what does it mean, I don't know. Changing that.
It's probably being gained as well.
Yeah, totally, yeah.
It's not telling you anything. What it's telling you is probably wrong because people are just manipulating the stats in order to make it look good.
I'm interested in your user research. So this sounds really important. My experience is it's really difficult to get a commitment to user research. Can you tell me a bit more about who are these participants? Are they in the organisation outside?
No, they're totally outside. No, so again, this is something that GDS has really helped us with. They have a user research lab in London, and we probably best use user research for these questions, but we go out and seek participants in it. So we just use user research organisations who go out and find members of the public and come in, and we kind of give them, these are the things we want to test. So these are the things we expect you to do in that research. But don't tell them why we're doing it, because what we don't want to do is kind of game it. People give us, if you tell the people why you're doing the thing, they'll give you the answers you want. This is like a whole subject in its own right. Sorry, what was the rest of the question? Yes, yeah. We do pop-up research now and again as well. Just like go up to a library and just harass people in the library and say, can you take a look at this and tell us what you think? They're really good at doing it with internal people as well. So we'll go out and speak to the service desk or the fraud guys or audit and go, how does this system work for you? Yeah.
How do you integrate that with your timetable in the sense that user research, the reason you're doing user research is because you want to find things that are not working, and when you find things that are not working, that means more change.
Yeah.
And maybe what you built in the last sprint
could be,
now needs that sort of timing issue.
Yeah, so that's why it's really important to do it with prototyping, to try and build something really small that you can chuck away. You can afford to chuck away. Sometimes when we've done the live service as well, we have had that. It's like, well, we prototyped it and we built the thing, and now we've researched the live service again, and it's not behaving quite the same as the prototype is, and we're finding new things. So it's not infallible, but that's our tactic.
How do you manage to get your stakeholders to function in the ceremonies? Do they attend the ceremony?
Yeah. Show and tell is a really interesting thing. So we try and be quite informal about them. We try and sort of say, okay, we're doing like every 2 weeks, but we'll just do it in the team area originally. We'll just sort of play back the cards we've done in the last week. But they gradually over time turned into a kind of more formalised ceremony, almost like success theatre, if you like. And I think what I'd like to do is to differentiate between a showcase and a show and tell. So just do the show and tells to the product owner, just to say, this is the stuff we've done, you know, and you've already seen these cards and you're aware of it, but let's just take that time to go back over that stuff. But then less frequently do a showcase, like once a month or something like that, to say, this is all the awesome stuff we've done wider stakeholder community, and be a bit more formal about it, so they feel more comfortable in that kind of environment.
Our show and tells are very strange because we're obviously just moving existing system onto a new stack, so nothing has changed at all. So this is it before and this is it after. How exciting is that? It's exactly the same.
Yeah.
But honestly, behind the scenes, it's on a different place. So
Yeah, and that's brilliant. It's not changed. That's the point.
Yeah, so that's interesting.
The reason I ask is some of your MI information and the people around stakeholders were asking for, if you can get them to come to the regular sort of retrospective or ceremony, and I found in the sort of lab work before, they start to get an understanding and appreciation of the work involved, and when questions come up,
Yeah.
again, it gets that shared understanding and that dialogue going, and help.
Yeah.
And they get interested in stuff in cloud language or whatever.
And that's definitely helped with some of our stakeholders. So some of our legal colleagues have really started to sort of adapt to risk and like, okay, or how do we explain this legal stuff in language that's clear and stuff like that? And you're just like, yes, this is brilliant. But yeah, not every stakeholder is adapted as well. So, but yeah.
Same with getting into the research session.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Yeah.
When you say you attack, you use all that, but sometimes it's not one of the organisations.
Yes, it's a really hard one because you kind of we kind of always feel like the awkward team almost within the organisation, and that can be hard for the people in the team too. But it's mainly about, for me, it's about trying to remove as much of that organisational noise as possible, but while still promoting what we're doing. So we're not just the weird team in the corner doing the agile stuff. And yeah,
Yeah, you
so
are.
yeah, well, yeah. Yes, it's a really interesting topic, that one, actually. I think there's always, I don't think silos go away with agile. It's about where those silos are structured. So if you've got a self-organising team around a service and they're responsible for all of that, then having a silo around that isn't necessarily a problem. And they haven't got dependencies on other teams as much, then is that a bad thing? I don't know. Yeah. So that's a really interesting topic in its own right.
Are you done?
Any others?
I noticed that 11:15, which is pretty much spot on. So I think on behalf of the audience, my top tips for hearing in the future is always to present when you're A squared,
Hungover.